a lot of that bringing others on a journey is being able to create a vision, being able to inspire, being able to show others the sort of direction of travel where you might be hoping to go. And although that message may not get across in the first instance, the more you talk about it and the more you bring more people along on that journey, gradually there's this sort of movement that you start to create that can lead to a bigger change.
Hi, I'm Tracy Lovejoy.
And I'm Shannon Lucas. We are the co-CEOs of Catalyst Constellations, which is dedicated to empowering Catalyst to create bold, powerful change in the world.
This is our podcast, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, where we speak with Catalyst executives about ways to successfully lead transformation in large organizations. And today, I am delighted to get to be with the Director and Business Accelerator at the London Stock Exchange Group, Marianthe Evangelidis. Thank you for being here with us, Marianthe.
Hi, lovely to meet you. Well, I've met you already, but lovely to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. So we'd love to give you the chance to introduce yourself and hear about your catalytic journey, highlighting career and personal highlights that you really feel can help us see the catalyst inside of you.
Absolutely. So hi, everyone. My name is Marianthe Evangelidis. I have transitioned into being a director in sustainable finance and investing at London Stock Exchange Group. This is where I lead our strategy for distribution and growth. And I really love my role because I feel as though it's actually real and having an impact in driving positive change in the world. So I'm very enthusiastic about the role that I'm in. In terms of some of where I've come from in my career, there are a couple of highlights, both I suppose you'd call career highlights, but also really life highlights that I'd love to share with you. The first is really, if we focus on sort of our career highlights, is becoming a director of product and technology at LSEG within the accelerator, and launching the first AI workflow tool into the industry was absolutely amazing, and really showed the first to market. It showed innovation, it showed creativity, and really it was pushing the forefront. So pushing change in an environment that doesn't really change a huge amount very quickly and takes time to happen was amazing to be able to go and do. The second career highlight for me was looking at where I became a non-exec director of Capital Enterprise, which is a not-for-profit, which is engaging and supporting the startup ecosystem in the UK and supporting underrepresented founders. So again, really it's the impact, my career highlights are the impact I've managed to create in the industry. If I talk more about sort of life highlights, a couple of years ago in 2018, I actually decided to take a sabbatical and skipper a yacht from the UK to New Zealand. And I would absolutely advocate taking a sabbatical to anyone. It was a massive challenge. You had to have a lot of drive to do it. We didn't really have a vision of exactly what we wanted to do other than perhaps sail around the world. And so my husband and I bought a yacht, did the work on it without having a huge amount of experience of actually understanding what yachting or sailing across oceans might be. And we sailed from the UK to New Zealand just before COVID hit in 2020. And it was amazing. The cultural, the understanding of risks, the building a team, working with others, really that community was absolutely amazing to become immersed in, and an amazing challenge to be able to complete as well.
So many questions, Marianthe, I have to admit. So bouncing from what you were just sharing, I have a lot of clients in coaching, executive clients in coaching, who can feel a little bit nervous about taking the sabbatical, what it might mean to their career. So would love to hear how you justified that, what it meant to tell that story when you came back, because I'm hearing it was a lot of learnings, but I would love to kind of hear how you think about this and the advice you have for others within that.
So there's no shying away from the fact that it's a daunting prospect to suddenly step away from a high-flying career where you're being promoted, you're going to leadership trainings, you're being involved in new projects which are really exciting and starting to escalate and becoming like part of the I say the norm of the business, but like the most exciting bits of what the business is doing at that time. I think that the way I reflect on it is, and I think this is a trait of Catalyst, is that we're not great with just constant no changes, like things just remaining flatline. We're constantly looking for something like, what's next? What are we going to get involved in? What dreams do we have? What are we going to be able to do? Where are we going to be able to create impact? And for me, taking that step back and saying, right, what do I really want to do? This is an experience I've never had before. I'm stepping into somewhere that I am very uncomfortable. I'm very uncomfortable doing, but I'm going to take the leap because It's interesting. It's different. I'm getting married this year. Let's take it as a honeymoon. And that's exactly what my husband and I did, is we took a leap of faith. He gave up his job at Amazon. I took a sabbatical with LSEG, and we stepped into a boat and set off across the oceans, which I love learning. I don't know if you, Tracy, and you, Shannon, it sounds like your background is very much part of your part of what you do and how you've lived. So for me, learning, this was a massive learning experience, and I came back stronger from it.
I love the title learning. When you talk about it, as you're heading back into the workforce, what was that like to say, I took a year?
Terrifying. And it was 2 years. So it was a terrifying prospect to come back in. I think that when coming back into the workforce, it was positioning the challenges and actually what I learned from the experience. The experience I had before in product and technology really, and the experience I'd had at LSEG and financial services really helped my transition into the role I took in the business accelerator at Refinitiv at that time. It's not to say on my sabbatical I didn't have additional experiences. So for example, we worked looking at solar panels on some of the remote islands in Tonga to figure out, okay, is this a good investment? Is this something that is even feasible for some of those islands to have? So we're starting to build more of a link towards sustainability and starting to support sustainable infrastructure in some of those islands. So that was almost a piece of learning and work and a challenge in itself. So for example, we jumped in a dinghy. You couldn't access this place by yacht. You had to jump in a dinghy. It was a little bit perilous, but had a really amazing, I suppose, story to tell around some of the experiences we had on the journey. It wasn't sort of the glamorous, oh, you're lying on a beach. It was actually a lot of work. It's not an easy journey to take.
And without using this word, so forgive me, I'm putting words in your mouth. It sounds like this as a journey connected to a sense of personal values and personal purpose.
Yes.
That learning is a key element of who you are and what you want to do, that getting to engage in sustainability in different ways. And so while it may look like a weird left turn from a career trajectory, from a life trajectory, it was actually a really key aligned step. Is that right?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. There's
I would imagine
adventure in it. Also, it's just a sense of adventure in that life story and life experience piece, but it very much ties back to what is the world going to look like in 20 years' time? How do we even start changing that story and what we're doing as a population? What's the human race going to look like? And so understanding that and going on this journey and experiencing what it is now in some of those low-lying islands, I felt was really valuable. As those are the places where things are going to change. So yes, definitely as a life story development.
I would imagine that helps as you move back into the workforce to contextualize it in that way, especially as someone who works in sustainability.
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of the work that I kind of then went into was a lot around, was a sort of move from technology and infrastructure to data. And so what we know about the way the world works is that data is informing a lot of the decisions, the investment decisions, the identification of risk around sustainability and investing in companies. And so understanding from a supply chain point of view of where is that data even going has been really helpful on my journey, and then entering back into sustainability again in the workplace.
Amazing. Thank you for letting me dive into that.
Absolutely.
You've already started to unpack this a little bit. Would love to understand what that concept of catalyst means to you, especially as an executive.
So there are two elements that really, really kind of strive out to me. The first is around connecting the dots, and bringing people together. It's really been fundamental to any successes I've had in my career. So for example, I think it was 2 years ago now, I worked across the LSEG business, which was a newly created business essentially because we had the acquisition of Refinitiv into the LSEG group. And as part of that, we created and launched the LSEG Innovation Network. Now that was bringing together innovation teams from across this newly formed business. And I suppose the important thing here is when I talk about connecting the dots, it's about creating a network and an ecosystem. And the reason that's incredibly important isn't just in the here and now of creating a network and the impact it can make now, but the impact it can make in the future, because you never know at what point you might need to call on that network to be able to make a change. And the second piece that I think really relates to the catalyst concept in that piece is when you then see the bigger picture, you can bring that network and community and the ecosystem together to make a huge impact. So when I think about some of the experience that I've had and the pieces of catalyst, the catalyst traits that I bring, those are the two pieces that really stand out to me.
And there's a theme I hear from your introduction, even within that, the word impact, that I wonder if that's really tied to how you live your life as a catalyst. You'd said, I love my current job because I'm really getting to make an impact.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to have you talk a little bit. So, connecting dots, collaboration, bigger picture ecosystem, but I'm guessing it all needs to have an impact for you to be worth it. So can you unpack that a little bit for me?
So yes, it needs to have an impact for me because that I suppose ties into my values. But also if I think about how you're successful, it's demonstrating to others that what you're doing is creating an impact. Whether that's at demonstrating to your exec committee that the work you're doing, the investment they're putting into the projects that you're doing is creating an impact, you have to show that. Otherwise, you're not going to show success. A lot of the time that impact comes down to revenue. I think the reason that I'm enjoying the role I'm in is, yes, there's a revenue impact, but you can intrinsically see the link through to the benefit it's creating for the world as well.
Amazing.
I'd love to jump in. Like everything you just talked about is like the awesome stuff, the sparkles of being a catalyst, right? The fun parts. But I mean, we know, and I'm wondering what you face, like it's not always easy to be a catalyst executive. And so I'm wondering if you can share one or two of the biggest challenges that you faced in that role as a catalyst leader.
So yes, I've got two. The first is moving too quickly. And it's not an issue to move quickly. I think the challenges of moving quickly is if you don't bring others along on the journey with you. And a lot of that bringing others on the journey is being able to create a vision, being able to inspire, being able to show others the sort of direction of travel where you might be hoping to go. And although that message may not get across in the first instance, the more you talk about it and the more you bring more people along on that journey, gradually there's this sort of movement that you start to create that can lead to a bigger change. So just to highlight, the challenge for me isn't that you move too quickly, it's that when you move quickly, you need to bring others quickly on the journey with you. Exactly. And then the second challenge for me is I'm both a mother of two and a catalyst. And so you kind of want to do everything at the same time. So for me, one of the biggest challenges is, well, what am I going to focus on? You don't have all the time in the day to do whatever you want to do. You've got kind of responsibilities. And so for me, going back to my values around my family and my sort of personal values has been really important in being able to make sure I'm setting aside the right time to both moving forward projects, but also managing the family and looking after them as well.
Well, thanks for bringing up that last piece, because it's not, while we talk about living an intentional life and the importance of that around catalysts, I don't know that we talk a lot about that, the family piece of that. And so I'm wondering, like, how do you think about balancing that? How do you, or balancing might not even be the right word. How do you handle that challenge?
I think I feel very fortunate that I'm in a relationship where there is balance. And so having that opportunity to share the load is really important, but also recognizing where sometimes you do want to put, say, one of the projects you're working on ahead of maybe your family, and understanding why you want to do that and what the impact of doing that is, both on the project, but also on what your family. So what's important to you in the way you're working with a family, but what's important to you and what impact you want to create in your work time, sort of career time as well.
And so do you do that? Do you lean in sometimes and say, yeah, I'm going to put this project like sort of on the front burner, or how do you navigate that when that's...
And there's a huge amount of guilt if you ever say that. I think that it always refers back to me of, well, what gain is my family gaining out of this? And so trying to make sure that if, yes, I am stepping back and doing something that is more orientated around work, actually my family are gaining something in anyway, like whether it's spending time with my husband, whether there's an activity that they're doing which is really like beneficial or they really enjoy. So you're kind of having to balance the, yes, I'm making an impact in work, but also making sure that the family are gaining something from it as well.
Yeah, that resonates so deeply personally, because it's like one of the things, I was a single mom pretty much from the beginning, and one of the things when I had to make those tough choices, like also, what am I modeling for?
Yes, exactly, yeah. And there's completely, so I always think back to my mom was always working, she started her own businesses, but it's when I think about not the expectation I'm expecting for my kids, but the fact that they know that as a woman, you can work and you can have a family. And yes, you're balancing constantly, but it's important to know that you can do that. And if you haven't got a role model potentially in the business who's doing that, you need somebody else to show you it's possible.
Yeah. The other thing that I want to connect back from earlier in your story, when I coach people, and this is very present, this comes up a lot in coaching, right? That tug of war. These weren't your words, but you had a really interesting way of thinking about time, because you're like, this is an epoch, an era of 2 years of rejuvenation that this is my commitment for these 2 years. It's not like it was a 2-week bucket. And so I'm wondering if you can talk about like how time, zooming in and out of those choices that you're making, and maybe like some of the ways you're thinking about that in the future.
It's really, I think if you're constantly go, 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 you sometimes don't reflect on the way in which time passes. Those 2 years went in a flash. They were really quick. And especially, I definitely feel as having kids that the time goes even more quickly. You feel like you're rushing from one thing to another and you don't get that time to pause. I think in time, it's, for me, I don't necessarily think about the time things are taking, other than the fact that, for example, if we wanted to go again, we've seen lots of go again sailing, for example, and go on that adventure. There are sometimes time limits on doing that. And so you do have to work in periods of time. The way in which I don't necessarily look at it from a time aspect, I think it's from an opportunity point of view of, this is an opportunity that I will never get again. Therefore, I should take the time in order to do it.
Fascinating. And I think there's a theme that's coming through too, that you, it sounds like, articulated or not, have a good sense of your values, your core values, which helps to navigate that opportunity choice.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And values can change. So it's not to say that if you establish what your values are, that they're going to change considerably. It's okay if they don't change. It's great if they change as well, because that really supports any decisions and the time you're going to spend on different things. So
that's right.
For me, family is a big value, and I know it's a big value for my husband as well. So it's great that we have that alignment. It can be challenging if your values don't align with others, but I think when I think about how being successful and kind of moving up into exec positions is, you can have values that may contradict each other, but you'll probably always have one value that's going to come out on top. And just understanding the sacrifices that you're making in order to achieve that value has been really important as well.
There's a clarity and a core to you that's super powerful. And so I'd love to bring that back to the first part that you talked about, because moving too quickly is a double-edged sword for Catalyst. But when my follow-up question would be like, how do you handle that? But in a way, you called out some of the things, like, it's not the moving too fast that's actually the problem. It's the ramifications on the other people. And so you're like, so you need to create a vision, and you can't just say it once. You might have to say it until you want to poke your eye out with a pencil because you're so tired of talking about it. And this movement creating, I'm wondering if there are other things that you've learned that let you walk that balance of moving fast enough that it feels good for you, but moving fast enough to drive impact and bring people along.
I always go back to this 2 things. I should really have 3 things that I could say. So 2 things. So one is really, as you're trying to bring people along the journey, is how can you empathize and reflect on how those people might be feeling around you to respond to your behavior, to respond to your vision, and really making a note of, if you can empathize with others, or at least this is what I find, if you can empathize and think about where they might be coming from, especially in a business point of view, because everyone has their sort of what they're driving towards, the revenue targets they might be driving towards, the way they want the business to grow, the strategy they've got around the business. You can empathize and think about, well, where are they coming from? Can I put myself in their position and think about that? And then what do they want or need to hear in order to be able to come on the vision and move as quickly as I'm moving? The second piece is actually thinking about really having that senior sponsorship. Without that, it's really difficult to bring people along on your vision. So just going back to LSEG Catalyst, actually, it was so important when we're thinking about an innovation movement and kind of moving from the bottom up. It was great. I mean, you had a lot of enthusiasm, you had a lot of people wanting to work towards making it a success, but you do need that senior sponsorship to actually move things quickly as well. So those are the 2 sort of wisdoms for me in terms of, within a business, how do you make a success of a project? So it's the senior sponsorship, and also empathizing and reflecting what others are expecting.
you, again, just sort of, if you feel like you embody empathy, I'm sitting here going like, I wish I could have worked for you at some point. But I'm wondering if you have any advice on how to get senior sponsorship. Like we talk about that a lot, but
Yep.
it's not like, woo, we can easily just walk up to the CEO and be like, here's what we're doing.
No, it's really, and it is really challenging. From the years I've had working on projects and building business cases, a lot of it is about how do you align to the organization's values, but also to the key objectives, like the group objectives. Admittedly, there's always the sort of the necessity to understand what the revenue is that a project or a business case or something is going to generate. And if you can show it's going to generate a lot, that helps a lot with the business case. But in terms of approaching and talking to senior execs, it's been a lot about making sure it aligns with what their objectives are. Otherwise, those are the company's objectives. If you're heading in the right direction, if you're heading on the same path that those execs are heading on, then that alignment is only going to stand you in good stead to be able to actually kind of getting that sponsorship.
And how do you think about getting the sponsorship of multiple stakeholders across when they might have different objectives that you're trying to connect to?
So that it's definitely time consuming. But I think if I think about even from a board level of before you go into a board meeting, you're going to have had conversations with everyone in that board meeting to check your alignment, to check sort of how they're feeling, to empathize with them and think about, well, what's their positioning? What are they looking to get from these particular decisions? And so there's always a thread of how somebody's objectives align to what you're trying to do and what you're trying to move forward. And so, yes, it can take time, but it's really important that you identify those for each of your key stakeholders and then can go and have those conversations with them.
And how do you manage your energy? Because I think that's sometimes the part where the catalysts are like, it's not moving fast enough. I have to do all the work, all the emotional labor to bring people on this journey. Like, how do you keep your energy throughout that?
It really goes back to values of looking forward to spending time with my girls. But in a workplace, there's always I think as long as you can see yourself moving forward a little bit, there's energy you can draw from that. So it's not as though you're going to hit your big vision and hit your success rate straight away. It's always a journey, and setting yourselves up those smaller steps in order to meet that ideal vision, at least is what keeps me going. So those little successes are really what kind of keep me energized. And every so often a coffee. I'm really struggling. I definitely find I get a lot of energy out of that.
Amazing. And one thing that we didn't talk about after we hit record that you actually encouraged us to do as we were doing the intro is celebrate the wins along the way. Like, thank you for re-gifting that back to us.
It's really important.
It's super important. All right, final, if you had a magic wand, is there anything else that you would love to help, to have in your toolkit to help overcome those challenges?
So based on the challenges, my magic wand would be just infinite time. But I do also say that with biting my tongue as well, because I think infinite time, although it may sound amazing, in a way you don't then start to appreciate time and appreciate the time you have to do things. So I think that although my magic wand would be infinite time, there are lots of tools to make your life more efficient, make you more productive. But in a way, it's good that you have to make decisions on what you want to do and how you spend your time in your life.
Oh.
Do you? Is that what you'd want? Is that your magic wand?
I feel it, but the time thing, it's like, when you said it, I was like, yes, infinite time. And then like, you have to make choices and it's like, oh, it's so painful sometimes though. Cause as a catalyst, you're like, I want to do all the things, but you're not wrong. Absolutely. I was like the bittersweet lesson of it makes it more precious because you have to choose.
It does.
Right?
Yes, exactly. You appreciate life, I think. To focus on the things that you really want to do, and it's good to be able to make those decisions, because otherwise everyone might have infinite time, and then where would we be as a human race?
We'd never get anything done.
Totally. I'll do this tomorrow. It'll be fine.
Within that vein, you use the word opportunity that I'd love to follow up on, that, you evaluate kind of each opportunity. How do you do that? Do you have a conscious way that you do that? We've talked about values, we talked about time, or is it more gut as, the sabbatical opportunity or a new job opportunity? What does that look like for you?
It's a mixture of gut, and it's a mixture of a little bit of data analytics and understanding the outcome of that. It's difficult to have all the data, so you do have to make some assumptions about what you think where you think you might be heading. And when you're talking about opportunities in terms of business decisions, often you're going to have data to support that, and there are going to be revenue targets that you're aiming to support, and you'll collect the data from clients, etc., to be able to support that business case. When it comes to the opportunity of a new job, for example, you're not necessarily going to have all of that. Yeah, okay, you might be paid more, great. But what other opportunities in your career development is that going to build? So something that I try and do, and that I'll talk about one of my previous managers, is making sure that you always have a development plan. So, because when we talk about time, actually time goes very quickly. And if you don't kind of think about, well, where do I want to be? What sort of traits? Where do I want to potentially be? Do I want to be a CEO? Do I want to be a CFO? Where do I potentially maybe want to be in 20 years' time? What are the traits? What are the characteristics? What are the skills that you might need in order to do that? And so every year I have a development plan to understand some of the skills I want to build on. And that also helps me manage that year of time, thinking, well, I may not have sort of launched a new product, but I've developed this and this skill that I think is going to get me to maybe where I want to go. So development plans has been really important. And that when I think about opportunities, I think about, well, what skills is that opportunity lining up with? What new skills am I gaining from it?
I love it. And it ties back to you sharing that learning is so core to you, right? That kind of in every opportunity you're assessing, it's okay. If a core thing for me is learning, what can I learn? As opposed to, other ways that we may measure opportunity, as you say, money. But I just love that for a catalyst to really be thinking about what do you want to achieve in life in some period of time? And how does this particular opportunity align to that or not? It's nice. It's a different lens, which is, I think, incredibly helpful. So thank you. So a lot of catalysts can stall out in our career, right? We have behaviors you're talking about, bringing people along, moving too quickly. And so moving into this director position for you, right, at the executive level, what is it that you have found in your journey that allows catalysts to move into executive positions? Or said another way, what can stop us from moving into those positions?
So I think that for me, it's the leaders. So whether it's your senior sponsor, whether it's your manager, I think that is one of the most important elements of being able to progress. And otherwise, I feel like you can often be banging your head against a brick wall. So that senior leadership support is really what helps you move into that next role, whether that's within the company you're in, so having that senior sponsorship there, or whether it's through the coach or mentor that you have outside the company. And if I look at sort of the mentors that I've had, such as Sneha Shah, actually, it's them having a belief in you as well and wanting to move you on and develop you, I think is so important in actually becoming, being able to reach the level where I am as well.
And so if folks don't feel like they have that, do you think it's worth it to leave?
Really good question. I think that you can gain that. You can find a mentor who is not necessarily in your business. What I would go back to is, what are your skills? What do you want to develop? Are you learning in the role you're in? And so you are progressing in a way. What do you value? I mean, it's difficult, right? When you start your career, actually, you want to go up the ladder as quickly as possible, and you want to earn as much money as quickly as possible. Do think about what those skills are that you're learning that could help you jump to the next level, whether that's in the business. So you might be gaining lots in the business you're in that will then help you jump outside the business.
And what is it that a mentor has helped you to do in the growth and progression? Is it that they're opening the way? Is it that they're helping you see yourself, right? Like, why is a mentor so key?
And so I think mentors can do a couple of things. One, they could potentially have the contacts in the industry to help you move about if you want to. They could be a senior sponsor, so they can help you move into positions that are opening up within the business. But in addition to that, they can look at the skills so imagine you're not particularly great at identifying what skills and expertise that you might have that could be applicable across different roles. They can help you identify, talk through the development plan that you have, potentially suggest ideas of where you could move to based on where you want to get to. Because it's not as though you could start in a grad position, but then jumping to CEO position, there are potentially skills you need in between. Potentially. They can help you that potentially, I don't know, who knows, you might be actually going and starting your own startup. So essentially,
fair.
you might
That's
jump
fair.
into CEO position straight away. Who knows? So that's the only caveat on that. But it is a ladder, and not a ladder in terms of career ladder, but a skills ladder that you
Right.
want to be able to go on. And it may be you find yourself in a position where you don't have all the skills, but the point is that you should be able to learn them and develop them, and your mentor can help you in thinking about, well, how and where can you do that?
I'm so struck across this conversation by the intentionality, and Shannon named this before too.
Literally the word.
Is that what you wrote down? That
Yeah.
it's an intentionality that spans time, which Shannon talked about, right? And you talked about for Catalyst, it's the connecting the dots, but also kind of, looking from a different view. And I just I hear you talk, and it feels like you're like zooming out and looking at your life, zooming in and looking at your life, looking across this moment of your life. And it's such an interesting feeling to, kind of get to across this conversation. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
It's exactly the word that I had written down, Marianthe, and it's like, I just go back to like where you're sitting with the intentionality. I can only imagine you're unstoppable. Like,
oh, thank you.
No, but like legitimately, what we have found is like there's a range of sort of like catalyticness in terms of, speed and scale. There's a range in terms of how much we burn out, but this like wisdom that you're sitting in that is quiet and strong and powerful as a catalyst is really inspirational. I was also going to say, I was going to call up Sneha and just thank her for this conversation because you're so inspiring.
Well, I'm really glad you think that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have to say though, you learn from others, don't you? You're inspired by others. And I think that when you talk about wisdom is often learned. And so when we talk about mentors, if you have good mentors who you can take and understand skills from and a way of working and a way of thinking, I think that just helps build sort of the wisdom that you have and the way you start to think about things as well. There is an element, you never want to really grow up, do you? So I think there's a timelessness to wanting you want life to be.
Yeah, I don't hear that you're not having fun with life. In fact, I hear quite the opposite, like bringing that almost like childlike beginner's mind sense of wonder and like an openness to the experience. Yeah, that's how I experience you. And I also just want to say for like listeners, as we've been talking, and I'd love your thoughts on this before we pivot to the people who inspire you. But, I think as especially more junior catalysts, and this was me early on when I did finally start getting mentors and stuff, I felt like a deep sense of obligation's a little strong, but I didn't realize how much the mentors get out of the relationship with the mentees too. And so this podcast is all about sharing the wisdom, Marianthe. That's why we do it. We want to help accelerate bold, positive change in the world, right? But I'm just wondering if you have thoughts about that really briefly on like the relationship, what it means to the mentor as well as the mentee.
Oh, I think it means a huge amount. So I've been a mentor for a few people across financial services, and you get as much out of seeing the people you're mentoring becoming successful and being successful as hopefully they get out of you with the expertise you can share with them. And this shows through the not-for-profit work that I do as well, is I really believe in people and developing people because they're so important to where the world is going. And I think if you can share a little of your experience, and they can use that to, I suppose, not just be successful, but also create positive impact themselves. It just, for me, it's that warm, fuzzy feeling, which sounds terrible, but I really value and I believe in that.
Amen. We do too.
Amen.
All right.
Sorry, that sounded really preacher-like.
No. That was not facetious at all. That was like a deep, like, preach it. Yes, that's it. Go. All right. Who's inspired you? Two of your favorite famous catalysts, past or present, or not famous? They don't have to be famous.
Well, it depends. Maybe they'd say they're famous. Who knows? So the first would be Sneha Shah, who I mentioned previously, who has actually been on the Catalyst podcast as well, who was my previous prior to manager, like two managers ago. She was absolutely amazing. She inspired me. She is a role model, a true and sort of holding values and making an impact. She's uplifting. She gave me hope through a lot of change. She really sort of supported when you think you're going through change. It can sometimes be quite difficult, but actually, how do you really look at the opportunity and change? And especially in the world we're in at the moment, there's change in regard to sort of climate change. Say there's change in regard to the change in which in the way businesses are working. But she really gave me hope and a belief that even through all of that change, there's always an opportunity to try and make sure that you're you're identifying that opportunity, but also you're being really thoughtful about others and the impact it might have on them as well. So she's my first catalyst, who I think is absolutely incredible. The second, who I'm not sure if many of you have heard of, is Beryl Burton. And so for me, she's the greatest female cyclist of all time. She's sadly not alive anymore, but at a time when there was almost no support for female cyclists, she broke national records, she won world championships, and as you can understand, with sort of the balance between male and female sport, at the time she was alive, sort of mid-century, last century, she was just absolutely incredible and a real catalyst in driving change, identifying opportunity, just incredible woman. And I think that not many people know about her story. So if you do get a chance, I think understanding more about her and seeing the bigger picture of where cycling is heading, she was absolutely incredible.
Awesome. I'll ask you how to spell her name so we can put a link to something about her in the show notes. Yeah, totally. Marianthe, it's been just such an honor, really like such an honor to have this conversation. I hope it's the first of many. And thank you for being here with us today, sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
To our listeners, thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to learn more about how to create bold, powerful change in the world, check out our book, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, or of course, go to the website at catalystconstellations.com.
If you enjoyed this episode, please take 10 seconds to rate it on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you have other catalysts in your life, hit the share button and send a link their way. Thanks again.